Okay, so with resist, what we're trying to do is we're trying to not allow the paint to go into the paper. Okay, so we're resisting using some sort of substance that doesn't like water, right? Because water doesn't like plastic, or water doesn't like wax, or water doesn't like oil. Okay, so we're going to try things like tape, oil pastel, the candle, the wax crayon, rubbing alcohol, salt, and this is just another tape technique, okay? These are my favorite techniques, resist techniques, because they're kind of like, they feel magical the way that they work. So with the tape, you can do a couple different things. I didn't bring myself some scissors, but that's okay. So you can create shapes with it. So I'm just going to use the tape to create a triangle. Now, it's a good idea when you're using tape to use the back of your fingernail and just rub down the edge of it. That way, it's really sealing it to the paper, and then you're not going to end up with paint getting underneath by accident. Okay, so I'm using the back of my fingernail to really rub down that edge. And I'm just going to create a shape here to show you how we can fill that, okay, with paint. I'm going to show you the trees because I think they're kind of fun. Not that you guys will be doing trees because you're going to be doing other things like abstract things, but if you want to make like a nice watercolor painting for your mom, she would love this if you did this, I bet you. You just rip your tape in half and it gives that kind of nice edge, that kind of rough edge, and that will help us create trees later, which I'll show you. Some nice birch trees. So I got my tape down so I can get to painting into that tape now. So we'll do green, I think. So we're just gonna fill that space in with the paint, and I'm gonna let it dry, and then at the end I'll take off the tape to show you how it's not gonna get paint, hopefully, around this inner triangle that I've created. So that'll be nice and filled in. And then with the trees, do maybe some scumbling around there, maybe even some wet and wet. You can see I can paint right over top of the tape. That's the idea, is that you should be able to paint over top of whatever you're trying to resist, whether it's tape or oil pastel or crayon. It's not going to soak in where the tape is. So I'm just going to let that dry. And then I'll put down my oil pastel, my candle, and my wax crayon. So I've got a candle, and I've actually cut off the tip, what's it called? The wick for you. But you can also use the bottom. Okay, so with the candle, maybe I'll just do some circles. So obviously you're not gonna see it, right? Like when you were a kid, I don't know if anyone did this, but I used to do this. I used to write secret messages because I had two little sisters and I didn't want them to read my messages. So I would write them in like white crayon, and then I knew the secret was you had to paint over it to read the message. Nobody did that, right? Because you guys all had cell phones, you just texted each other. Yeah, okay, that's cool. So now I've got my oil pastel. Okay, so we can't see any of that, right? I promise it's there. So now we will reveal the secret message. Let's do, what color do I want to do? I never do brown, so I'll do brown for a change. Okay, so like magic, as we paint over it, should reveal what I did. So this one was the candle. Okay, so you can see wherever you use the wax or the oil or the candle, it's going to stay white. So if you want to preserve a part of your page and you want it to stay white for your design, you're going to use one of these. See, that was my crayon. And then finally, my oil pastel. Okay, so you can see they all kind of work very similarly. You can't really tell the difference between them. So they're just different ways to do the same thing. Okay, now we're getting to one of my absolute favorite techniques. So pay attention. So one of my absolute favorite techniques is the rubbing alcohol. And that's because this is very similar to what I do with my alcohol ink paintings, but it's using watercolor. So you'll see what the alcohol does. It's pretty magical. Okay, so you want to get down a lot of color, and then you have your alcohol container. Okay, we're not spraying. Okay, it has a spray nozzle on it, but don't spray it. It'll go everywhere. So you're just actually going to take it out. There's going to be a little bit of alcohol underneath, like on the little spout, and you're going to drop it into the water. So you can see it actually resists because water and alcohol don't mix. So it's pushing the paint out. It's pushing it out. So it kind of gets this cool tie-dye texture. Okay. You can also dip a Q-tip in here and do the same thing. So the thing is, with your sketchbook paper, you might not even get this effect. So just warning you. Once you get a piece of watercolor paper, you'll see you can do it a little bit better. And then the final one is salt. So why do you think salt works as a resist? Can someone tell me why salt would work, Dominic? It does. So you'll see what happens is, when I sprinkle salt on here, it'll leave these little salt markings. So what the salt is doing is it's absorbing the water, which leaves that texture of the salt there. Now, this is another mistake people make with this one, is they leave the salt on the paper, okay? Once it's dry, not now, but once it's dry, brush the salt off, and then you'll see the little white markings a little bit better there, okay? So let's see, I think this looks dry enough. We can peel off the tape. Now, really important when you're peeling tape, go slow and peel at an angle. So you'll notice that I'm not going straight like this. Okay, I'm peeling it at an angle. That actually increases the chance that you'll get a nice straight line and that the paper won't rip. So just be very careful, because ripping paper is something that can happen. If I can just get this off, you'll see my triangle. You can see my paper started to rip back here, but because I'm going at an angle, it's not going to rip into what I painted. It's going to kind of protect that triangle. Okay, so we got a nice little clean shape. So if you ever want to create a nice clean shape, you use tape, right? And then I'll make my little trees here just because they're fun. So this one really stuck to the paper. So if it starts ripping one way, try ripping your tape back the other way, and hopefully it will stop ripping. So if you want to make little birch trees, and you can go back in with your Sharpie, make sure that the paint is dry, because if you put your Sharpie in to wet paint, you're going to get a dead Sharpie. So don't kill your Sharpies. You can just add in some details, make it look kind of like a birch tree, and that's really fun. So that you've got your tape, you've got, this was my candle, this was crayon, wax crayon, and oil pastel. and salt. And this was rubbing alcohol. Okay, so those are your resist techniques. Any questions? Okay, so I'll give you about 10 minutes to try the resist techniques.